Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lunch Update, our program that helps you stay curious, connected, informed, all live and in real time. This conversation, like all of our Lunch Update programs, are made possible by our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, but also a special thank you to our Accelerate sponsor, Baker Tilly, and our small and emerging business sponsor, Easy Office Products. As always, we record these and then we post them on our webpage at madisonbiz.com so that you can either go back and see something you missed, share it, or just check it out for the first time. And if you are joining us on Wisconsin Eye today, welcome. We're glad to have you with us. Coming up, we will be joined by UW Chancellor Rebecca Blank, who will discuss and highlight her tenure, but also what she thinks the future looks like from her vantage point as a chamber board member as she begins her new role this summer as the president of Northwestern University. Before we bring on Chancellor Blank, let me give you a few chamber updates. We're holding our first Advocacy in the AM of the year this Tuesday, May 17th, from 8 to 10 a.m. at the Madison College Goodman South Campus. The event is titled Equity Equals Opportunity, and this event will feature a discussion around one of the top priorities of the Chamber Board's two-year advocacy agenda, which is making Greater Madison the best place in the country for entrepreneurs of color to own a business. Panelists who are confirmed, you have Eugenia Podesta, who is the co-founder of Synergy Co-working and the recipient of the Ground Floor Award this year from the Chamber. Corey Whitmore, who is the owner and founder of Media 22, and also will be leading and managing a podcast that we will soon launch here at the Chamber. Sayum Megasa, who is the Minority Business Development Director for the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, and Saran Oak, who is a leader within the Office of Business Resources. She's a manager there at the City of Madison. Advocacy in the AM is presented by Alliant Energy Corporation and WPS Health Solutions. We thank them for their support, and you can register now at our website at madisonbiz.com. You can also join us for our first outdoor fast break of the year on Wednesday, May 25th, from 8 to 10 a.m. on the 4th floor outdoor terrace here at the U.S. Bank Building, which overlooks the Capitol. It's an opportunity for chamber members to start their day with connections and reconnections, along with coffee, pastries, and a free special edition mug, which we will be unveiling later, but I'll give you a little sneak peek. It looks something like that. Although our vaccination protocols at the Chamber have changed as we continue to move into the endemic phase of COVID-19, this event still does require a COVID-19 vaccination. So if you are registered to attend or you do plan to attend, please note that. Thanks to our presenting sponsor, Catalent, who is a vaccine producer, Accelerate sponsor, Starian Bank, and design and mug sponsor, again, Easy Office Products, for supporting the series. There were already 100 people registered. We had over 150 at the last one. And so if you would like to attend, I urge you to go to madisonbiz.com and register. And now for today's guest. Rebecca Blank became Chancellor of UW-Madison in July of 2013. She is an internationally respected economist who has served in 3 different presidential administrations, most recently as the acting Secretary of Commerce under President Obama. From 1999 to 2008, she was the Dean and Professor of Public Policy and Economics at the University of Michigan. She's also served on the faculty at Northwestern and Princeton, as well as she was a fellow at the Brookings Institution in Washington, D.C. And as I mentioned, she's also a member of the Chamber Board. Welcome, Chancellor Blank.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Zach.
I will state for everyone that thinks that's a purple jacket, it is not. It is a blue jacket. It's just
blue.
Color. It's just color correction. So yesterday was the mayor at an event that was held 2 days ago, where I saw you. The mayor had a proclamation that said yesterday was Becky Blank Day here in the city of Madison. I wondered what did you do for Becky Blank Day?
Well, I was very honored and very surprised by that proclamation. You'd think I'd at least have the day off work, but unfortunately I didn't. I did bring in free donuts for everyone in the office. I thought that's the least I could do on Becky Blank Day.
You told me a story that you told your daughter and she didn't believe you that there was such thing as a Becky Blank.
She had a note back saying, "Fake news, send me the picture." And so the mayor had actually given me a plaque. I sent a picture of the plaque. It was clear she didn't believe any of this. And she said back, "Oh my."
Well deserved. So last time we had you on, it was the height of pandemic, and we talked a lot about the health of the campus, physical health of the students and the faculty and staff, and everything that you were doing to lead the campus and the community through that crisis. But we also were talking about the economic health of campus and what were the challenges of trying to run a world-class institution during a pandemic where students couldn't be on campus and staff and faculty couldn't be on campus. So as we close out this school year and we find ourselves a little further down the road and a lot more information at our hands, where do things stand on that front? What's COVID-19, the pandemic, and the physical and economic health of the university look like?
So starting with COVID, we're in a much better place and a little bit more normal for the first time in 2 years. We have no more masking or testing requirements like the rest of the county. We do continue to encourage people to mask if they have reasons to do so, and for everyone to respect that. And we've had no issues with that. We're providing free testing and free masks and free vaccination and booster shots to anyone who wants it. This hasn't gone away. And in fact, as you know, in the whole region, we've seen an uptick again in infections in the last week or two. But what's quite striking is we have not seen any increase in serious disease and hospitalizations, which does suggest to me the level of vaccination, the level of booster shots, the ways in which people are behaving are such that, we're getting pretty close to this being an endemic disease. And that's good news. And we'll see where we are next fall. I'll be very curious as to how normally we can open. You asked about the financial health issues. It was not clear what was going to happen to us in that first 6 months to a year of the pandemic. And, large numbers of our revenues just plummeted. Fortunately, we lost almost no students. The students stayed with us, but, the Union Terrace was not open. Our athletics competitions had no one at them. We were bleeding some money in a number of areas. Fortunately, we have come out of this pandemic, I think, very strong. Some of that is because we took actions to reduce expenditures. Partly it's because the federal government provided money to cover about a third of the costs. And I must say, the governor has also given us money to cover at least some of our testing costs, which were quite extensive over the 2-year period. So that has helped us. We had something of an enrollment surprise last year. We had no idea who was going to come after that first year of a pandemic, and our applications were way up, but so were all of our peers. So we thought a lot of people were double applying, and that meant we'd probably have a lower acceptance rate than usual. We ended up not having any lower acceptance rate. In fact, it was up slightly. So we ended up with more students than we had been anticipating. And of course, that created some challenges on campus, but it was very good for revenues. So we are in a very stable place with regard to revenues. I'm very pleased with financially where the university is, where it's come over the last number of years, and it should be on a good path going forward.
It's good news. Well, appreciate your leadership and getting us to that point. Let's pull back and kind of go broadly to your time, the past 9 years. Why did you apply for the job initially? I mean, you were acting Secretary of Commerce. You've already been in higher education. What made you want to come back? What was the appeal?
So, I'd spent 4 years in the Obama administration. I didn't go in necessarily expecting to be there for the full 4 years, but I got promoted and had a number of job opportunities that I wouldn't have predicted to start with. And as you note, I had been acting secretary for a year. It was very clear that President Obama was going to name a new secretary. He had a great choice. And I sort of looked around and I could have stayed at Commerce, but I'm an academic by background. I've spent almost my entire career around universities. I always assumed I'd go back to a university, and I thought this is the time to look around. So, I looked at available jobs, and Wisconsin looked terribly attractive. I'm from Minnesota. I've been in and out of Wisconsin my whole life. I've known this university a little bit, and fortunately, both my application and the region's interest coincided, and they hired me.
Yeah, well, we're thankful that you did. Someone noted to me the other day that we've had a number of great chancellors, but many of them were either local, so they came through the university system or the university campus, or they became more notable after their time here, where you were an example of us bringing in somebody who was notable prior to being here. And so hopefully that continues to be something for the future for us as we think about the campus. So you, as I noted, you were at Michigan before working in DC, and then at Northwestern before that. And as you noted, you are from Minnesota. So the Big Ten wasn't foreign to you, but I wonder what surprised you about coming here. What about the work or about the University of Wisconsin was a surprise to you?
Yeah. So, the first thing that really struck me in my first several months on campus was the enormous seriousness with which people took the Wisconsin idea and the mission of the university in outreach. I've been at a number of other universities. All of them talked about the fact that they did outreach to the state, outreach to the community, and they all did a little bit, but it was very much an afterthought and not a core mission of the university. And it was very clear that the people who worked at this university thought it was their core mission. Whenever anyone listed the mission of the university, they listed three. They listed education, research, and outreach. And I very quickly adopted that. It was one of the things I really loved about this university is it takes that image that you need to take what you do here on campus and bring it out into the world. And it's very, very serious about that, much more so than any other place I've ever been. So that was one. That was a pleasant surprise. I mean, the other thing that, I don't think anyone's quite prepared for is the extent to which this is a highly regulated university by the state, more regulated than almost any other flagship university. We came out of being a university, a state agency, and we still are in a number of ways. And, that's just really different than many other places that I have been.
Yeah. I know you did a press conference yesterday. You had a blog out that talked about some of the middle of the night phone calls that you received. I did laugh out loud about the one where they said that the surf pool was leaking and that they can't find the water, but don't worry, they'll take care of it. I assume there was no sinkhole, so they did find the water, but
a sinkhole never opened up under Dayton Street, but people were worried.
Yeah,
so that water went somewhere, but don't ask me where.
But I would note that even for somebody who has worked so closely with you and certainly has seen the university as part of our success, I have forgotten how much you've accomplished in your time here. What are you most proud of, though, when you think of that long list that I've seen over the last couple of weeks of just reminding how much you've got accomplished here? What are the things that stand out to you?
Well, I'd list that sort of generically because there's just a lot of things that I want to emphasize. I've said this everywhere, that these are not my accomplishments. These are the accomplishments of the entire university, because the people who did all of this it's not me. It's my team. It's the deans. It's the faculty. It's the staff. It's the students. And it's just been a great place to work, in part because it's been a great team. It's pretty generic, but I mean, the thing I'm most proud of is I feel like we've moved forward on all fronts, right? I'm very proud of the fact that our educational outcomes look better now than they did 9 and 10 years ago. I'm very proud of the fact that our research dollars have grown substantially, and we have reasons to believe they're going to continue to grow. I'm very proud of the fact that we have much greater access, and the number of applications have doubled since the time that I've been here. And, we've increased diversity and increased access while doing that. And all of that has been important. And then, people don't talk about this as much, but I take this very seriously. It's going back to the Wisconsin idea. I had the opportunity 5 years ago to bring public media, Wisconsin TV and radio, and the Extension Service, which does outreach across the state, back to UW-Madison. Those are both entities that we created in the 1900s and the 1910s. They were with us for 50 years. When the system was created, they got pulled away into a separate division. And I was really proud to be able to bring them back to UW-Madison. I think we make those entities stronger by bringing our faculty and teachers and administrators and policies to them, but they make us stronger by bringing us out into the state in so many different ways. And that's a legacy that's going to last a long time too.
Yeah. For me, many of those were on my list. I would highlight two more that I just want to make sure that we say thank you for is certainly the new Comp Sci building is going to be a big piece of the future of this region's success. But I also think that what you've done in working with the foundation as well is to activate alumni into donors. You had an ambitious goal when you set out to do the fundraising 4 or 5 years ago, and to where we actually ended up, I think puts this university on a great path forward and protects us from many of the things that we worry about, because we have that legacy resource and that activation of our alumni base.
Yeah, and let me say something about each of those. There isn't a university in the country, public or private, these days that doesn't need the support and help of its friends and its alumni. And the University of Wisconsin Friends and Alumni have just been great. To say, we had a fundraising campaign over much of the time that I was here, and we sort of blew our goals out of the water and all across the board. And it's made such a difference to our scholarship dollars, to our ability to retain faculty, and to some of our building projects. Let me say something about computer science, because yes, we did create the School of Computer Data and Information Science from existing units when I was here. And the building, which will start going up in another year or so, is going to be a great testament to that. But the real testament is the program itself. And the building just houses that. Since we created this school now, 2.5 years ago, computer science has become our biggest undergraduate major. It always used to be economics or psychology or bio, which had 1,100, 1,200 majors in it. Computer science has 2,300 majors right now and growing by leaps and bounds. And then it's serving all sorts of non-computer majors who want to come in and take some of the courses or do a certificate or something less than a full major. And there isn't a discipline or an industry in the country that isn't deepening its connections to computer and data science, and having a very, very strong group of faculty and students and staff and programming in that area is one of the most important things for setting the university up in the future.
Amen. So you've been active in the community. You have not seen your job as within the four corners of campus. You've been active in the community. You've supported growth of Greater Madison's economy. You've lent your expertise, and as we think about how do we grow, I still remember some of our very early conversations around entrepreneurship and seeing how that has flourished on campus, but also outside of campus. And you've served on our board at the chamber, as I noted, but you've also served on the MadRep board and other community entities. As you think about the region's changing economy, and it's changed a lot over the last 9-10 years, and we've seen tremendous growth in advanced industries, including things like computer sciences. What do you see as an economist and a chancellor? What are your observations about the economic trajectory, both on an opportunity side, but I'd also be interested in what you see as the challenges for this region?
Yeah, one of the fun parts of these last 9 years has been living in Madison and watching this region grow. The entrepreneurship community, which was very nascent when I came, has really grown into, as has the venture capital community around it, to much, much more presence. And it's great to see that. And whether we're talking about biotech or gaming, you can see the growth of these new industries in this area, which more and more of our graduating seniors are staying in Madison in a way that 20 years ago just didn't happen, because there's some really exciting jobs, and I hope that continues to happen. There's no reason this type of growth can't continue. The university obviously is central to it, but so are all the other places and people around it. Sometimes I have to say, I think the city gets in its own way, and sometimes the state gets in our way as well. We have to understand, particularly in the city, that we can do more than one thing at once, right? So for instance, we do need housing for all of the young people who are staying here and taking on opportunities. We also need affordable housing for many of the other groups in town that do all sorts of important jobs. You don't have to do one and not the other. You need to be doing both, right? I think the city needs a little more attention to thinking about the fact it's in the middle of one of the fastest growing and most exciting sort of industry expansion areas of the country. And it can make that a lot harder. It can make that easier, and it needs to make it easier. That doesn't mean that you have to be pro-growth about everything, but you need to be pro-smart growth. And the chamber obviously should be a good partner in that.
Yeah, I agree. I've often said, could you imagine what this community could do if we actually tried?
Yeah.
And I agree, we get in our own way many a times. You mentioned the state, as a partner both on our regional economy, but also certainly as the chancellor of a flagship public university. Part of what's necessary here, probably less necessary in a private institution like Northwestern, but certainly here, you have to have strong relationships with elected leaders. And over time, we've watched the Madison campus and really the system get caught up in political crossfire, whether it's funding, how the funding's used, how much tuition is, what buildings should be built or not built, what's taught, what's not taught, who says what and has the rights to say whatever, there's just to name a few of those many issues that have bubbled up at the state level. What's been your approach as you've navigated that? What's been your approach in working with state leaders?
So you have to listen to everybody, and you have to listen with respect, and understand that they have their own set of concerns. And ideally, if you want to move things forward for the university, you've got to figure out how moving things forward for the university helps advance their agendas and their objectives, right? So, we are caught up in a time of very partisan and divided politics. And what's been happening here at UW is no different than what's been happening in almost every other state of the country. And I say that about red states as well as blue states. The issues are a little different, but in a partisan and divided time, public institutions get attacked, right? And universities are particularly available to be grabbed as a political chit to put out there for your base and to attack and to demand they do other things. And that just makes this a hard time to navigate through. Some of it, you just sort of got to take some incoming fire and let it roll off you. You've got to be very clear about what it is you need, why you need it, and why it's a good idea from their point of view, not from your point of view, but from their point of view to try to give it to you. We've won some of those debates. We've lost some of those debates, but you have to keep working at this. And I will say the other thing you have to do, particularly in this job, and I've tried to do this very clearly, is you can't have multiple agendas. I'm the head of the University of Wisconsin in Madison, and that's the only agenda I can have. And therefore, the only issues that I address publicly and that I talk about and that I write letters on are issues that are of deep and central concern to the university. And there's a lot of demands that come into a university to comment on everything happening out there. And there are many very important things happening out there. But if we're going to survive in this particularly difficult political time, we've got to stay focused.
As you think about that agenda that you have to stay focused on as the chancellor, how do you rate the state's overall support in that agenda?
Well, again, I'd say we're in no different a position than many of our fellow flagship universities all around the country. I think we've had a more stable board of regents than some other neighbors that are nearby. We went through some very bad budgets in 2013 and 2015. We had deep budget cuts. We've not had any cuts since then, but we've not recovered a lot of money from that. Sort of the dollars went down and they've stayed down. And that's not unusual here compared to any other state. My biggest concern with the state is not the level of support. I've got other things that I can do, though we need state dollars, particularly to the educational support of core educational issues for our in-state students, if nothing else. But the trouble is that the state has lots and lots of management controls over the university, where we either have to do things by something that's in state statute or state regulation designed for all sorts of state agencies that don't look anything like us, or we need a whole series of approvals to do things that really have to happen on campus. And then those approvals often don't happen, not for any reason related to campus, but for other agendas that people are pursuing. And, that makes this university particularly difficult to steer. And, I've said this a number of times, we need greater flexibility, particularly in running UW-Madison, if we're going to compete and stay up with our peer schools.
At dinner the other night, I had a chance to chat with the incoming UW system president, Jay Rothman. He's got, hasn't even started yet, and he's got some chancellor shoes to fill. But I asked him a question that you've heard me ask others elected officials before, including two governors. It's the question I usually frame it around is, it took us a century to build this world-class institution. And part of being world-class means that you solve the world's challenges and that you have a global footprint. So how, I asked him, how do we resist the temptation to regionalize and focus on small things and focus on the needs that are in our own backyards, of which we have many. But basically the point was solving the world's challenges will help us solve our challenges. His response was heartening. I didn't expect, I had probably a better answer than I've heard even from governors. And it came from advice that he said he received recently from his soon-to-be counterpart in the University of Texas system, who said the first thing you do is protect the flagship. I wonder what that looks like. I mean, as you think about protecting the flagship, what does that mean? What has to happen in order for that to be real?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed getting to know Jay as he's coming into this job, and I'm sorry I won't be working with him. It was a great answer on his part. Protecting the flagship, it means actually understanding the value of this flagship to the state, to the region. I do think that there are a number of state elected officials who don't fully value what a big research university brings and don't understand that we bring things that no other higher education institution in the state provides. And that's particularly, that some of that is through our educational process. We bring more young people into the state by orders of magnitude than any other institution. Now, we have to work in partnership with the businesses of the state to keep them here. But is that an opportunity for the state or not, particularly a state that is shrinking and needs more talent? So the educational front is important, but the research front is even more important. And your comment about global, you have to solve the global problems to solve your own. That is what our researchers are about, right? They really are working on problems that may have important state manifestations, but that are of interest in many cases around the globe. And we're ranked. We just said these global rankings just came out, and we can argue about them. We're number 27 of all universities in the world in the latest round of global rankings. We have a global footprint, and with that global footprint, we tie the state of Wisconsin into all the things that we are tied into. From my time at Commerce, I know absolutely that what is it that a high-tech industry is looking for? And high-tech industry is everything. That's not just manufacturing. It's insurance and healthcare and all types of industry are increasingly high tech. They want to be near a major research university, both because of the people that they provide that can then be hired, but because of the research partnerships and the knowledge and the information and the sharing that goes on. And if this state is going to advance, if it's going to stay where it is, much less move forward in terms of income growth, population, having a university like UW, University of Wisconsin at Madison, this is absolutely golden for them. And there are not a lot of people who seem to understand that among some of the, at least among many of the state legislators. They sort of take us for granted. And, it's very easy for an institution like ours to go downhill. It's much harder to compete in a world where the competition among top universities has gotten more and more fierce every year for the faculty we hire, for the students we bring in, for the research contracts. And the state needs to understand that. Some of that is financial support. Some of that, as I said, is giving us the flexibilities to operate the way our peers do. Some of that is just public recognition of the value of this university. I would love more state officials to occasionally stand up and talk about how wonderful it is to have UW-Madison in this state. That hasn't happened very often during my time here.
To that point, I haven't seen an HQ1 or HQ2 site selector request for qualification list that didn't have world-class research or have large-scale research university as one of the basic tenets of requirements. What about we talked a little bit about the state's responsibility in that. Well, what has to happen from the business community to protect, if we're talking about protect the flagship, what's the business community's role in supporting the campus?
Well, I certainly hope the business community is going to work with our students, hire them as interns, hire them as employees, be present on campus. Oftentimes, business leaders are invited to campus to help mentor students, to talk about career paths, to give students a sense of their industry and their company and what opportunities that might create. So I hope they'll work with us on that front. That's sort of obvious. I hope for many of them where this makes sense, that we might be research partners. And we're signing increasing numbers of what are called master research agreements with companies. These tend to be bigger companies that basically say, we know we're going to want a number of research collaborations in the years ahead. Let's establish the basic parameters for how we do that. So as issues come up, we can just go do them and we don't have to negotiate through all of this. We've already done it once and signed this master agreement. But thirdly, and this is really important in this state, we really need the business community to be political advocates for us. They do understand the value of this university. And, I understand why it's sometimes hard to speak out. Businesses have their own agendas they're talking about, but I really need the business community going to their state legislators, going to the governor's office, talking about that this university needs support, that it needs flexibilities, and indicating why that is so important to their business. That just can't be said often enough. And when we say it by ourselves, we just sound a little bit too self-interested, right? We need other advocates out there, and the business community is one of the most important.
One of the things during your tenure is you've faced some episodic external challenges, things that could not have been predicted. Like we talked about the pandemic among one of those. The other one was a change that I think misrepresented the value of tenure and sent a message across higher education of this seismic change, which wasn't real, but you had to navigate that. So I'm interested, and you did navigate it, and I think it's one of those things that should be listed amongst your successes of not having a wholesale evacuation of our faculty. But you accelerated into that challenge and then certainly have accelerated out of it. What lessons can you lend to us as leaders that you learned from tackling those types of challenges, these big episodic, no way you could have ever forecasted it, but all-consuming challenges? What lessons can you impart?
Well, the first one is you've got to have a great team to work with you, right? Because these are not issues that one person addresses. They affect the entire community on campus, and both internally and externally, you've got to have a team that is just ready to move. And when something unexpected comes up, they sort of sit there and say, well, that's different. Let's see what we should do about it, right? And so that's number one. Number two, you have to have a really great communications group, because your communications externally, when these things come at you, are incredibly important, but your communications internally are just as important. And, in a world of social media, those can't diverge. You can't try to do one message inside and another message outside. And, during the pandemic, we sent emails to all staff and students every week. And we did that for 2 years, and said, this is what we're doing. This is where we are. This is what we know. This is what we don't know. Here's why we're doing what we're doing. Here's why we aren't doing that. I can't say everyone agreed with us. We certainly didn't. We got a great deal of flack during all of that time, still are. But we were quite clear about what we were doing and why we were doing it. And that really mattered. And in a similar way, we tried to be quite clear to our external audiences, which were everything from parents. We were sending regular notices to parents, to our alumni who were saying, what in the world's happening at the university, to elected officials and others, and others around the Madison-Dane County community, who we obviously were interacting with and were concerned about what was happening at the university. So a great team and a really skilled group of communicators was, and a willingness just to think outside the box, to be flexible. Say, well, none of us had ever dealt with a global pandemic before. None of us had ever dealt with a situation where the state pulled all the tenure rules. And, rather than panicking, you've got to just sit down and say, all right, let's work through it.
Right. So the whispers are that the regents are close to announcing a successor. No white smoke yet, but we know it's should be soon. I'm wondering what's the most important piece of advice that you would leave? What's the letter on the desk that you leave for your successor?
I hope I'll have a day to spend with my successor, whoever it may be. A list of things that I've got to tell them, right? They're going to learn everything they need to learn when they come in. The most important thing I actually think is, there's some wonderful aspects of this job, right? It's being a university president has its downside, I can tell you, but it has certain aspects that no other senior CEO-like job in the country has, right? I've got my own ice cream flavor. I've got a mascot. I've got a marching band. I've got all these teams. I've got a great music hall. I've got the terrace and the bike paths and what, and the ability to, walk outside my door and talk to students and talk to faculty. This is, this is a job that has a lot of joy in it. And it will have some really hard days. There'll be times when everyone's telling you to do different things and yelling at you regardless of what you do. And you got to keep your head through all of that. But you have to always remember to look out and remind yourself of all the wonderful aspects of this university and this job and all the way in which you're privileged to hold it. So, my best advice to my successor is don't ever lose that sense of joy around how much fun it is to be at this university.
Yeah. Are there hopes that you have for your successor, things that either happened to you or for you, or maybe didn't, that you hope that they have an opportunity to enjoy? Are there hopes that you have?
I'm obviously been working on a number of things. I hope they'll continue that, but they may have new ideas and go in new directions. The main thing I want is that my successor comes in and, keeps the university moving forward, and whatever that means, that's up to them.
Yeah. What will you miss most? I mean, you just listed off a litany of things that are fantastic about the campus. What will you miss most about campus?
I was down at the terrace last night after an event that I had to go to, and Hans and I were sitting there with our pizza and beer, and it's graduation weekend this weekend. So lots and lots of students in gowns or fancy dresses are taking pictures, and parents who had clearly arrived. And there is no other spot in the country on any college campus, both as such a beautiful setting on the lake that brings in not just the students and the faculty and the graduate students, the staff, but the entire community. And I will miss that. Whenever you sort of have a free moment, particularly in the summertime, Hans and I try to say, well, let's just walk over to the terrace and spend an hour. And it isn't there anyplace else.
Right. One of the things as I've traveled around the country, but certainly when I've traveled internationally and talked to alumni, I'm always surprised how much Madison, the city, played into their experience and how they talk about things off campus. We expect them as students. I remember once we took the virtual reality devices that your office helped us build the platform for. We took them to Japan and Korea, and there was a Korean graduate from the 60s who was with his wife, and his wife had never been to campus. And he was in the shot where you're floating above campus or floating above the city. And he was pointing out all the places 60 years later, well, here's where I lived. And this is where I, went to the bar. And, what about off campus? What are the things that you and Hans will miss about living in Madison?
Oh, I'll miss the farmer's market, which we wandered down to. I'll miss the bike paths. I'll miss, 5 minutes from my house to a parking garage to be at some great cultural events in the Overture Center. But, I'll miss Madison as a community in the sense that, this is a medium-sized town, the very active and engaged leadership. And, I love Chicago. I've lived there in the past. It's a great city. I'm looking forward to moving there, but it's a very big city. It's not, you can't put your hands around it in the same way that you can here in Madison and quite get engaged as fully because there's so many other aspects to it. And, it's one of the joys of Madison, particularly in the job that I've been in, is that, I've just been able to work not just with great leaders around the university, but really get to know the community leaders very, very well. And, being on the chamber board has been a piece of that. Those are opportunities that may or may not come along in another job.
Great. Well, let's set athletic success aside. What are the things that you hope for as you take on this new adventure at Northwestern? And what are the things that excite you or that you're hopeful for the new opportunity?
So Northwestern is a university that has moved up in the rankings and gotten better every decade for the last 50 years. I mean, the momentum is all in the right direction. It's one of the top 10 ranked schools in U.S. News and World Report for undergraduate education. I was there 10 years on the faculty, and it's got a much better faculty than when I was there in the 1990s. And you can see that. You can see it in the research. You can see it in who the people are. I am looking forward to going to a school that, has that trajectory, and yet you can walk into it and I can see things that I can say, this school can be even better if we can do some of these things, right? So there's sort of opportunities for leadership that I'm really quite excited about at an absolutely great institution. And, I will miss many things about Madison, but I'm also looking forward to this job. And I'm very curious, if you came back in a year and asked me, compare leadership at a public institution like Madison to a private institution like Northwestern, what I will say, I'm ready to be at a place with fewer constraints on it. Or you can get out of bed in the morning and say, let's move forward, as opposed to let's stop all the bad things from happening today.
Right. And not that you have to, I guess the difference is in Wisconsin, you have to have a relationship with the state's elected leadership. In Northwestern, it's an opportunity to have a relationship. And you've had J.B. Pritzker come to the chamber and come to Madison and talk prior to being governor, but certainly you have a governor with you have a family relationship, I assume. And
J.B. Pritzker is, of course, a very strong Northwestern alum. So we have very good connections with the governor there.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Maybe one of the most important questions is, you kind of rock the red. You got all those great red blazers. What are you going to do with the red wardrobe?
Well, a lot of the red in my wardrobe I had when I came. I love red. It's my favorite color. I am definitely working to acquire purple. I've been so busy, I've had enough time to go shopping, but I do have to work on that in the next month. I'm going to tell everyone around this building up here that, sometime next week, I'm going to bring in all my scarves and my t-shirts and, my earrings. And I don't think I can wear those down in Chicago. So I'll give them to a good home here in Madison.
Sounds good. And then I guess as we wrap up, from an introspective look, we've talked a lot about all the great external work, everything you've given and contributed to this community, for which we can never say enough thank yous. But when you think about your time here, and I looked back and it said that the average tenure of a chancellor at a four-year university has been on the decline over the last couple of decades, and now it's about 6 years. And we were fortunate to get 9 with you. But what have you learned about yourself during your time here? I mean, what are those things that, from an introspective, that made a difference in who you are as a leader?
So, I walked into the role, and this was the first role that I'd fully had as the CEO, right, as the full leader. I'd been acting secretary, but that's not quite the same. Deputy secretary is the number 2. I've been a dean. That's certainly not the full leadership. And, you never know when you walk into that type of role, what that, how that's going to go and what it's going to feel like. And, I think I've learned that I really enjoy doing this type of leadership. I've learned about the importance of having a wonderful group of people around me and what I don't know and can't do and how important it is to listen to them. These jobs shape you. I come out of here with a great deal of confidence about the next job I'm going into. I hope that is justified. But, partly this has been a wonderful run. I feel like I've made a difference at this institution. And I'm sort of looking forward to the opportunity to trying to do that in a different way, in a different type of institution.
Yeah, well, you certainly have made a difference here. A story I told at our recent annual luncheon, Icebreaker. Obviously, you heard it because I told it you were there, but for the audience, I talked about the first big speech that you gave to the business community locally was annual dinner in 2013. You were one of the keynotes, and you have a tell of when you're speaking, when you're comfortable, you lean into the podium. I've watched it now for 9 years, and it's a cue that you're comfortable in the setting, and it happens a lot. But I remember that was one of the first things we noticed, and the person next to me said, she looks comfortable. She might be up there for a while. And although you ended your speech on time, thankfully, you were comfortable here, and you did lean in, and you did tackle some big challenges, and you didn't keep your voice silent on things that were off the campus that were certainly helpful in helping us grow. And for that, I certainly, as a leader who started around the same time as you did in this role, will forever be thankful and value and appreciate the relationship. And as I said at Icebreaker, we wish you much success, but just not at Camp Randall or the Cole Center or the field house or any athletic facility. So, Chancellor, I want to thank you for being here with us today, for all that you've given, and I hope you won't be a stranger to Madison. So we appreciate you.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you for everything you have done in this community over the last 9 years as well. The Chamber's been a great partner to the university.
Great. Well, best wishes, Chancellor. I want to thank all of you for attending. Thanks again to our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, as well as our Accelerate sponsor, Baker Tilly, and Easy Office Products, our small and emerging business sponsor. I hope everyone has a wonderful day, and I guess welcome to summer. I don't know where spring went, but enjoy the day. Take care.